The new American Pope, Leo XIV, Robert Prevost, received a forbidden phone call from the White House directly from Donald Trump moments after his election. When the white smoke rose over St. Peter's Square, no one imagined the secrets he would discover on his first day at the Vatican. Between ancient prophecies and modern conspiracies, his faith will be tested like never before. A story of power, redemption, and courage that will shake your soul. Prepare for revelations that will change your view of the Church forever. Subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The white smoke rises majestically above the Sistine Chapel, winding through the Roman sky like a divine messenger. The entire world holds its breath. A few seconds of silence separate humanity from a new era in the history of the Catholic Church. St. Peter's Square, previously filled with anxious murmurs, is now completely silent. You could hear a leaf fall on the 1,000-year-old stone ground of that sacred place. And then, the words that billions of faithful had been waiting for finally echo through the loudspeakers. Habemus Papam. We have a pope. Cardinal Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, emerges onto the papal balcony. A 69-year-old American whose eyes carry the weight of the responsibility he has just assumed. His face, though serene, reveals the marks of a night of prayer and deep reflection. What no one knows, what no one could imagine, is that behind the scenes of that historic moment, a storm is brewing. A storm that began with a simple phone call. Can you imagine the phone ringing within the sacred silence of the Vatican? Can you feel the chill down your spine when the newly elected pontiff discovers that on the other end of the line is none other than President Donald Trump, a man of secular power calling to give orders to the supreme representative of spiritual power? The marble walls of the Vatican, silent witnesses to centuries of history, now behold something unprecedented. The deep, authoritative voice of the American president resonates through the receiver. It's not congratulations he offers, but demands. Demands that could forever change the course of the Catholic Church. Trump's voice, laden with urgency, seems to invade the very air of the Vatican, contaminating the atmosphere of spirituality with the political pragmatism of the outside world. "Holy Father," he says with a disturbing familiarity, "we need to discuss the future of relations between the Vatican and the United States." In the sacred corridors of the Vatican, the atmosphere is not one of celebration, but of palpable tension. The cardinals walk hurriedly, exchanging worried glances. Their red robes seem more vibrant under the golden light filtering through the centuries-old windows, as if the sun itself wanted to highlight the gravity of the moment. Not even 24 hours have passed since the conclave chose the new American pontiff, and it is already clear that something extraordinary is happening. The President of the United States did not make a simple courtesy call. He demanded that the new pope use his newfound influence to broker a historic peace agreement in the Middle East. But not just any agreement. An agreement that directly contradicts the Holy See's traditional stance on the issue. An agreement that would explicitly favor American interests in a region already devastated by decades of conflict. The proposal is not merely diplomatic, it is an imposition disguised as a request. Pope Leo XIV, formerly known as Cardinal Prevost, walks through the still unfamiliar papal apartments. His steps echo on the marble floor like unanswered questions. How can a newly installed man of God already find himself facing such a profound dilemma? His eyes momentarily fall upon the crucifix on the wall, seeking guidance where generations of popes before him also sought it. Leo XIV's personality begins to reveal itself to those around him. He possesses a photographic memory that impresses even the most erudite cardinals, capable of quoting Bible passages and ecclesiastical documents with astonishing accuracy. His ability to listen, truly listen, disarms even the most defensive interlocutors. And there is something else, something the American president has not yet understood. An almost stubborn courage, forged in decades of service in poor communities before his ascent in the Catholic hierarchy. The dilemma now consuming the Pope is overwhelming in its complexity. How to address the political interests of the world's most powerful nation without compromising the Holy See's historical neutrality. How to refuse a request that, presented, persuasively by President Trump, could potentially save thousands of lives, even if it hid darker geopolitical agendas? The walls of the Vatican corridors, impregnated with centuries of whispers, seemed to watch him in silent judgment. Holy Father, the voice of the Cardinal Secretary of State, interrupts his thoughts. President Trump insists on an immediate response. He mentioned consequences for bilateral relations should Your Holiness not comply with the request. The first day of the pontificate, which should have been one of prayer and contemplation, has transformed into a diplomatic crisis. The world outside still celebrates, ignorant of the forces colliding within the sacred walls. St. Peter's Square remains packed with faithful waving flags and shouting in jubilation, while inside the Apostolic Palace, a silent drama unfolds. With only 2 hours left before his official presentation to the world, an even more disturbing revelation reaches the Pope's ears. An elderly Italian cardinal, whose tired eyes have witnessed decades of Vatican intrigue, approaches discreetly during a moment of relative privacy. "Holy Father," he whispers, his voice trembling with age and apprehension, "there is something Your Holiness needs to know about your election." The old cardinal glances nervously around before continuing. The conclave was not as guided by the Holy Spirit as tradition suggests. The Pope's heart races. "What are you trying to say, Eminence?" "Geopolitical forces, Holy Father. Interests that transcend our faith influenced several votes. You, an American Prevost, were the perfect choice to bring the Church closer to Western interests at a time of global crisis." The words fall like stones into a quiet lake, sending ripples of disturbance through the Pope's consciousness. President Trump's phone call is no coincidence. He expected this election. This revelation shakes the foundations of the new pontiff's faith. Could his election be part of a larger political plan? Could the Holy Spirit have been supplanted by earthly machinations? Doubt is a shadow that lengthens over his heart as he prepares to face the next challenge. In the sumptuous private audience room, the Vatican Secretary of State awaits with a worn leather briefcase in his hands. Documents classified as top secret reveal that Pope Francis, his predecessor who passed away just over 2 weeks ago, had initiated a revolutionary process of rapprochement with Muslim and Jewish religious leaders. The goal was ambitious: to create an interreligious council with real consultative powers that could offer solutions to conflicts plaguing the planet. Your predecessor was about to announce this initiative when he passed away, Holy Father, the Secretary explains, extending the documents to the Pope. President Trump demands that this project be abandoned immediately. He believes such a council would diminish American influence in the region. The implications are clear and devastating. Trump's request is not just about a specific peace agreement. It is an attempt to destroy a bridge between religions that could transform decades of interreligious dialogue into concrete action. The American president fears that a unified moral power could resist the political pressures of superpowers. As the Pope absorbs this information, an unlikely figure enters the equation. In the underground levels of the Vatican's secret archives, Sister Mary Catherine, a Brazilian nun specializing in ancient manuscripts, makes an extraordinary discovery. Her delicate hands, marked by time dedicated to preserving church history, tremble as she holds a medieval parchment that seemed to have awaited this exact historical moment to reveal its secret. The manuscript, written in archaic Latin and miraculously preserved for centuries, contains a disturbing prophecy: an American pope who would be tested on the first day of his pontificate. The words describe the current moment with astonishing accuracy. "And a pontiff shall come from the new lands, where the eagle reigns, and on the first day of his ascension, he shall be tested by the ruler of his homeland. His decision shall shape the future of the church for ages to come." The coincidence is too disturbing to ignore, especially when Sister Mary realizes that, upon returning from a brief moment of prayer, the manuscript mysteriously disappeared from her desk. Someone within the Vatican does not want this prophecy to reach the ears of the new pope. Someone with access to the deepest levels of the secret archives. In St. Peter's Square, bathed in the golden light of the Roman sunset, a crowd of faithful continues its vigil, praying for the new pope. Among them, skillfully blended with the pilgrims, is Elena Vesconi, an investigative journalist in disguise. Her sharp instinct, honed by years of covering the Vatican, detects unusual movements. American diplomats are entering and leaving through secondary gates. Security personnel with discreet communicators are strategically positioned. Something extraordinary is happening within the sacred walls, and she is determined to find out what. Elena watches intently as an American diplomatic car parks discreetly near a side entrance of the Vatican. Two men in dark suits quickly exit and are received by members of the Swiss Guard without the usual protocol. Interesting, she murmurs to herself, discreetly taking a photo with her cell phone disguised as a rosary. Since when do American diplomats have privileged access on the day of a papal election? The sun begins to set over the domes and towers of the Vatican, painting the sky with dramatic colors that seem to reflect the emotional storm within the Apostolic Palace. Pope Leo XIV finally makes his decision. He cannot and will not yield to external pressures without first consulting those who, like him, were called to serve the Church. He convenes an emergency meeting with the most influential cardinals of the College of Cardinals. In the ancient Clementine Hall, adorned with frescoes dating back centuries of papal history, the princes of the Church gather in an impromptu circle. The tension is palpable as the Pope explains the situation. Some faces turn pale, others harden with determination. The African Cardinal Dominic Ekweme is the first to speak. Holy Father, if we yield to this pressure today, tomorrow it will be the Chinese, then the Russians. The independence of the Holy See is non-negotiable. The Italian Cardinal Giovanni Bertoli disagrees. But consider the practical consequences, Eminence. The United States hosts millions of Catholics. The funding of our charitable works depends on the goodwill of American donors. The discussion intensifies, voices rise, centuries of Vatican diplomacy condensed into heated arguments about the Church's role in the modern world. It is at this critical moment that a young Monsignor bursts into the room, his face pale with concern. Forgive the intrusion, Holy Father, Eminences. He bows quickly in reverence. We have discovered something alarming. The Vatican's communication systems have been compromised. All conversations from the last 24 hours, including the conclave deliberations, may have been monitored. A deathly silence descends upon the room. The implications are catastrophic. If the systems were infiltrated, the Pope's response to Trump may already be known to rival powers. The sovereignty of the Vatican has been violated at the most fundamental level. At the American Embassy in Rome, located on the elegant Via Veneto, an employee of Italian origin sits alone in her office, her eyes fixed on a computer screen. Isabella Ricci comes from an old Roman family that has served the Vatican for generations. Now, as an intelligence analyst for the American government, she has been instructed to monitor intercepted Vatican communications during this critical period of papal transition. Her hands tremble slightly as she reads the report on the desk. The instructions are clear. Deliver all confidential information about the first hours of the new pontificate directly to the ambassador, who will forward it to Washington. Her divided loyalty deeply torments her. Born and raised a devout Catholic, she swore allegiance to the United States as a government employee, but her heart still belongs to the Church. A photograph on her desk shows a young Isabella next to then Cardinal Prevost during a visit of his to the United States years ago. He had been kind to her, remembered her name, asked about her studies. Now she is involuntarily betraying his trust. I can't do this, she whispers to herself, making a decision that will change her life forever. With rapid typing, she sends an encrypted message to a specific contact within the Vatican. Sistine compromised. Eagle hears everything. A coded warning that only someone within Vatican security would understand. Back at the Vatican, the Pope demonstrates that his election has brought something neither Trump nor the most conservative cardinals expected: strategic adaptability. In a surprising move that shows his understanding of the modern world, he organizes a video conference that will transform a unilateral ultimatum into a multilateral dialogue. If President Trump wishes to discuss peace in the Middle East, he announces to the astonished cardinals, then we must include all relevant parties in the conversation. Prepare the communications room. We will invite not only Washington, but also representatives from the Middle East, the European Union, Russia, and China. What was intended as a direct order will transform into a live televised peace forum. The audacity of the proposal leaves the room in momentary silence, quickly followed by a growing murmur of approval. The Pope is not just resisting pressure, he is redirecting it in a way that serves the interests of global peace and the Church. While preparations for this impromptu conference are hastily made, an old Vatican gardener works calmly in the gardens near the communications room. Antonio Gardini, with his calloused hands and face marked by decades under the Roman sun, seems just another humble employee. What no one suspects is that this seemingly insignificant man has been a witness to 4 pontificates, knowing secrets and passages that not even the Swiss Guard imagine exist. As he carefully prunes a bush near a slightly open window, fragments of the conversation inside the room reach his experienced ears. His eyes, still sharp despite his age, notice the unusual movements of American security personnel. With absolute discretion, he sets down his gardening tools and walks slowly towards an almost invisible door hidden by ivy on the side wall of the building. The Vatican's secret passages, built over centuries to protect popes during times of crisis, now serve a modern purpose. Antonio navigates narrow corridors and hidden staircases that lead him directly to the apartments of the Chamberlain, the cardinal responsible for administration during papal transitions. "Eminence," he whispers after being admitted discreetly, "the Americans have brought unauthorized equipment. They are installing something in the communications room. I heard them mention back door." The information is received with gravity. The Chamberlain immediately sends a coded message to the head of Vatican cybersecurity. The battle now extends to the digital realm, where firewalls replace stone walls in defense of papal sovereignty. Meanwhile, in a small side chapel within the majestic St. Peter's Basilica, an elderly American tourist is kneeling in silent prayer. Catherine Harrison, 84 years old with impeccably styled white hair, is not just another pilgrim. Decades ago, she was the moral theology professor of the young Robert Prevost at the seminary. Her teachings on the primacy of conscience over external pressures formed the basis of the moral character of the man who is now Pope. Catherine came to Rome specifically to witness the ascent of her former student, but something in her face reveals that she carries more than memories and pride. In her modest handbag rests a small diary, its pages yellowed with time, containing notes from conversations with the young seminarian about the ethical challenges a religious leader might face in an increasingly complex world. Notes that could provide the moral strength needed in a moment of crisis. At the Casina Pio IV, a beautiful Renaissance villa hidden in the Vatican gardens, scientists from the Vatican Observatory are gathered around telescopes and computer monitors. This group of Jesuit astronomers, dedicated to reconciling science and faith, observes with fascination a rare astronomical phenomenon, a planetary conjunction that coincides exactly with the election of the new pope. Father Jose Rodriguez, a Chilean astrophysicist, anxiously consults an ancient astronomical text. Medieval prophecies mentioned signs in the heavens on the day a pontiff would face his ultimate test, he explains to his colleagues. Venus, Jupiter, and Mars aligned in this specific way. The last time this happened was during the Great Schism. The scientists exchange worried glances. As men of science and faith, they resist superstitious interpretations, but the coincidence is hard to ignore, especially when events within the Apostolic Palace seem to confirm that something extraordinary is underway. The video conference with President Trump finally begins, but takes a completely unexpected turn. The screens show not only the Oval Office, but also leaders from various nations and representatives of international organizations, all surprised to have been included in this impromptu dialogue. The American president's face momentarily reveals his irritation before reassuming a diplomatic expression. "Holy Father," he begins with studied formality, "I expected a private conversation about matters of bilateral interest." The Pope smiles serenely. "Mr. President, Peace in the Middle East affects all of us. How could I discuss such a matter without including all interested parties? The Holy See has always sought to be a bridge, not a barrier. The tension is palpable even through the digital screens. Trump, accustomed to bilateral negotiations where his influence can be directly exerted, now finds himself in a multilateral arena where every word is witnessed by dozens of world leaders. It is at this critical moment that the president reveals his true motive, perhaps pressured by the unexpected exposure. Holy Father, there are matters beyond traditional diplomacy that we need to discuss. Specifically, certain documents in the Vatican secret archives. A collective murmur runs through the communications room. Trump's real interest was not the peace agreement. It was gaining access to the Vatican secret archives. Specifically, documents related to ancient, potentially revolutionary technologies that, according to rumors in intelligence circles, are stored in the deepest levels of the Vatican library. The Pope maintains his composure, but his eyes reveal that he fully understands the gravity of the moment. Mr. President, the Vatican archives are humanity's heritage, preserved through the centuries. They are not bargaining chips in political negotiations. As the tense conversation continues, the skilled Vatican Master of Ceremonies Monsignor Guido Martinelli supervises preparations for the new pontiff's first official Urbi et Orbi to the city and the world blessing. With eyes trained by decades of attention to the smallest details of Vatican protocol, he notices something disturbing in the papal vestments prepared for the ceremony. A small object, almost imperceptible, has been sewn into the inner hem of the papal robe, an electronic device the size of a button. Carefully, so as not to alert the assistants around him, Martinelli discreetly removes the object and wraps it in a silk handkerchief. A microphone, a tracker, something even more sinister? His mind races with possibilities as he quickly hands the package to a trusted member of Vatican security for immediate analysis. The hour finally arrives. Thousands of faithful fill St. Peter's Square. Millions watch on television and the internet around the world. The new pope must appear on the central balcony of the basilica for his first official blessing and message to the world. It is a moment, choreographed by centuries of tradition, where every gesture, every word has profound meaning. In the moments before emerging onto the balcony, Leo XIV makes a bold decision that demonstrates why the Holy Spirit may have, in fact, guided his selection despite the political machinations. Instead of the traditional, carefully prepared speech by the Secretariat of State, he decides to speak directly, from the heart, about the extraordinary pressures he faced on his first day as pontiff. My dear brothers and sisters, his clear voice resonates through the square as cameras broadcast his image to billions of people. Today, as I assume this sacred responsibility, I immediately face the realities of the modern world. Political pressures, geopolitical interests, demands from secular powers. An astonished silence descends upon the crowd. This is not the expected protocol speech. Without mentioning specific nations or leaders, he continues with gentle firmness. I must reaffirm a fundamental truth. The Catholic Church must remain independent of political pressures to fulfill its divine mission. We must be a bridge between nations, not an instrument of any earthly power. His words, measured but unequivocal, are a powerful reminder of the Holy See's independence. Without ever mentioning Trump or any other specific nation, he reaffirms the fundamental principles that have guided the papacy through the centuries in such an eloquent manner that the crowd erupts in spontaneous applause. In a world divided by conflict, his voice rises with genuine emotion. The Church must be a unifying force. We will continue the work begun by my beloved predecessor to build bridges of dialogue between all religions, all nations. Peace is not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice. And justice demands truth, even when the truth is inconvenient. For the powerful, in the shadows of the immense St. Peter's Square, diplomats from various nations exchange tense glances. The Pope's impromptu speech has just altered carefully planned geopolitical calculations. Among them, A senior Russian diplomat smiles discreetly. The game has just become more interesting. Her message to Moscow will be clear. The new Americans sigh. Pope will not be a puppet of Washington as some feared. The Urbi et Orbi blessing is granted with solemn gestures that have spanned centuries of tradition, but the words that preceded it represent something new. A papacy, determined to navigate the complexities of the 21st century without compromising eternal principles. In the papal apartments, hours after the blessing that captured the world's attention, Leo XIV finds a tablet mysteriously left on his desk. The device is on, displaying images and documents that make his heart race, visual evidence of decades of political interference in Vatican affairs, including communications between his predecessor and world leaders. A video file shows a private meeting between the late Pope Francis and advisors, where he discusses pressures received from various world powers. They don't understand that the Church operates in centuries, not election cycles, says Francis's tired but determined voice in the recording. If we yield today, we compromise 1,000 years of papal independence. The source of this explosive formation, a whistleblower within the American administration itself, someone with access to classified documents revealing the extent of the operation to influence the Vatican. An attached note simply says, "The truth will set the Church free. Use as your conscience dictates." The clock strikes almost midnight in Rome. The first day of Leo XIV's pontificate, which began with white smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel, is coming to an end. In less than 24 hours as Pope, Robert Prevost has transformed expectations of being a manipulable pontiff into a demonstration of independence that echoes through the corridors of global power. In the White House, President Trump watches a replay of the papal speech on his private television. His face, illuminated by the blue glow of the screen, reveals a complex mixture of irritation and reluctant respect. "He's smarter than we thought," he mutters to his chief of staff. "We'll have to recalculate our approach." In the Kremlin, analysts work through the night to interpret the implications of the surprising first day of the new pontificate. In Beijing, advisors re-examine their strategies for relations with the Vatican. In capitals around the world, the geopolitical calculus involving the Holy See is being urgently revised. And as the lights of St. Peter's Square finally dim, a solitary figure walks through the Vatican gardens. The new pope, in a rare moment of solitude, contemplates the weight of the tiara he now carries. The stars shine above Rome as silent witnesses to centuries of history, to the rise and fall of empires, to the machinations of the powerful, and to the persistence of faith through it all. His gaze rises to the majestic dome of St. Peter's Basilica, Michelangelo's masterpiece that has survived wars, revolutions, and transformations its creators could never have imagined. "I will not be the Pope who surrendered the keys of the kingdom," he whispers to the night. "Tomorrow will bring new challenges. President Trump will certainly not give up his objectives easily. Other nations will present their own demands. The battle for access to the Vatican's secrets has only just begun." But in this moment of quiet, Pope Leo XIV feels a profound certainty that he is not alone in this fight. His pontificate, begun under extraordinary pressure, may be one of the most consequential in modern history. The attempt at manipulation by external forces inadvertently selected a man whose faith and courage may be exactly what the Church needs in turbulent times. The world watches, Rome whispers, and the power game has just begun. In the small chapel within the papal apartments, Leo XIV kneels in silent prayer. The candles flicker as if in response to his unspoken words. Tomorrow, he will convene his closest advisors and begin implementing his predecessor's plan for an interreligious council. Tomorrow, he will face the consequences of his resistance to American pressures. Tomorrow, he will navigate the treacherous waters of global politics with the bark of Peter. But tonight, in this moment of sacred stillness, he is simply a man before God, asking for wisdom for the days ahead. The silence of the chapel seems to whisper an answer, an echo of ancient words that have guided the Church through the centuries. Tu es Petrus et super hanc Petram edificabo ecclesiam meam. You are Peter, And upon this rock I will build my church. And so ends the first day of Leo XIV's pontificate, a day that began with white smoke and ends with the silent promise that the Catholic Church, despite all modern pressures, will continue its millennia-old mission. What dawn will bring, only God knows. But for tonight at least, the Vatican stands firm, a rock in a stormy sea of conflicting interests and worldly powers. The bells of Rome chime the late hour, their sound echoing through the ancient streets of the Eternal City. A new chapter in the Church's history has begun, written not just with ink on parchment, but with courage and faith in the face of modern adversity. And while the world sleeps, angels watch over the city of popes, where an unlikely man has just proven that faith can still stand against power, even in the tumultuous 21st century.